Hi there. My name is Tyler Thomas, and I am the director of tonight's reading, Why Would I Dare? The Trial of Crystal Mason. And the four of us are here representing the Commissary, a new theater collective formed this summer. In the month of August, we discovered and read as a group this trial transcript of the case of Crystal Mason and felt compelled immediately to share this story as far as we could. So we contacted Crystal through her GoFundMe page and have been partnering with her and her fantastic lawyer to present this reading to you tonight. On October 10th, Crystal posted the following words on her GoFundMe page from a statement she gave outside the governor's mansion in Texas, pleading for clemency. And we thought there was no better way for us to introduce Crystal to you than through the use of her own words. Today, I went to the Governor Greg Abbott's mansion to ask for clemency. Here is my speech. I am Crystal Mason. I have been sentenced to 5 years in prison for casting a provisional ballot, which was never even counted. It was rejected. I am here to ask for clemency. I am here to ask for a different future for me and for Texas.
Because there was a time when African Americans had to be brave just to go to vote because it was so dangerous, I'm asking you to pardon me, Governor Abbott. Let me be the reason for the change.
My sentence was for being misled by the system. I was under the impression I was doing my civic duty as a proud American, but now, because of the attention the prosecution has drawn, it's all anyone knows me for. But I am so much more.
I am a business owner. I operate an event center, CMH Events DFW. I am a member of a church community, Friendship West, located in Dallas, Texas, where every single person matters. Thank you, Pastor Frederick Haynes. I am a mother of 3 amazing, beautiful, strong children that have learned about democracy through this whole ordeal. I am a grandmother of 5. I had custody of my brother's 3 children that I have raised up to be young adults that all live with me.
My ballot never affected the outcome of the 2016 election, but it made me think of other ways to have a voice and do my part in this country. I started a nonprofit, Crystal Mason, the Fight Against Voter Suppression. We have voter registration drives at my event center. We help educate voters about voting so they're not as confused as I was.
I want to thank you all for coming out to support me for my request for clemency. I have faith that God will touch the hearts of the right people to make this right. God has been with me through this all. I'm trusting him through the process. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you're here.
Do you need a moment?
No, sir, we're ready.
Thank you. Call your first witness.
Call Crystal Mason Hobbs to the stand.
Ms. Hobbs, come on up. Ms. Hobbs, please raise your right hand. Please be seated, Ms. Hobbs. Would you please print your full and complete name on the pad of paper for the court reporter? Thank you. Mr. St. John, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Now, just for the record, Ms. Hobbs, you've been present during these court proceedings today.
Yes, sir, I have.
And Crystal, you have a soft voice like a lot of these folks do. So can you move your microphone?
Can you move your microphone a little bit closer to you and talk directly into it? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to need you to speak up so the court reporter can hear you and can take down what you say. And I'm somewhat stopped up today, but that's allergies, I guess. I'm based on hunting too many times in my life. So specifically, we're going to go through this piecemeal and talk about your convictions in John Mcbride's court and what transitioned from there. So the whole issue is you're a convicted felon, correct?
I am.
But more specifically, let me look at those exhibits, Your Honor.
You may, and Mr. St. John, you may move about as you like you don't need to ask any permission of the court.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, there is State's Exhibit number 1. That's a judgment in a criminal case, and it's styled the United States of America versus Crystal Levon Mason Hobbs. And that's you, correct?
That is.
And you had a pending case before the Honorable Judge Mcbride and were convicted for a specific offense and sentenced to 60 months in prison. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what prison unit did you go to?
I self-surrendered to Carswell Camp.
And do you remember specifically when Judge Mcbride, well, first of all, let me start over. Did Judge Mcbride take you into custody at the day of the sentencing, or were you allowed to self-surrender?
I was allowed to self-surrender.
And for the record, now this judge knows what that means because he was a federal practitioner, but for the record, what does self-surrender mean?
Meaning I was able to walk myself into jail, come in.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you actually in federal custody?
I was in custody for about 2 years and 11 months, something like that.
And were you released to a halfway house at some point?
I was for 9 months.
Now, while you were in federal prison, was there ever any indication by anyone who worked for the U.S. government that you, being a convicted felon, could not vote?
Never.
When you went to the halfway house, where was the halfway house located?
I was on Avenue J.
And how long were you at the halfway house?
For 3 months I stayed there, and for 6 months I was on home confinement. So I was at my home, but I still had to report to the halfway house. And before I was able to be complete with the halfway house, I had to go through pre-release classes where you have to go back and meet with different people and sign papers and everything before you actually go on probation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this judge knows. Well, there's no federal parole law, right? So when you get released from prison in federal court, it's supervised release supervision, correct?
Yes.
But the entity that supervises folks is a federal probation officer, is that right?
That's correct.
And when you transitioned out of the halfway house, did you seek employment?
I did.
Did you get a job?
While I was at the halfway house, I worked for TxDOT.
And what does that stand for?
Texas Department of Transportation on McCart Street.
Oh, you worked at the big district office.
I did. I was the receptionist there.
What did you do at the district office?
I pretty much checked people in, did reports on the highways. Also, when the judges come in to meet with the clients, I pretty much had the room set up for them and everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but now when you say that, you mean a judge or a justice of the peace?
It's a judge. The judge comes in, like say if it was an accident on the road and they were coming to, mediate the situation or whatever with the judge, I would have everything set up for them to come in.
No, okay. All right. Let me do this. I'm just going to adjust that microphone just a little bit because your voice is so soft. All right. Let me help you out. Okay. So you got hired by the state of Texas. Right? Did they know you were a felon?
Yes, they were. Yes, they did. I went through Goodwill Staffing. So the Goodwill Staffing is a part of the Volunteers of America. So a bunch of us get employed through them, and they gave all the information to them. Yes.
And how long did you work for TxDOT?
I worked there right at 4, maybe 5 months.
Why'd you leave TxDOT?
I got hired on at Santander, making more money.
And what type of business is that?
Santander is an auto finance company. I work for QA Quality Assurance.
And were they aware that you had a felony conviction out of federal court?
Correct, yes.
How long did you work there?
I worked there up until this situation took place and they let me go.
Regarding this indictment?
Correct.
So tell the judge then how long you actually worked there.
I was there right at a year, and my supervisor girl, foreman, she dealt with my supervisor at Santander, so she's fully aware of everything. And then when this took place,
Now, when you were placed on supervised release, do you go through an orientation as a releasee from federal prison?
Yes.
And does that orientation include thou shalt not vote because you're a convicted felon?
No, I signed forms for my conditions. That was by Mr. Judge Mcbride. And I also filled out forms that I wouldn't be associated with a felon. I wouldn't be around any guns, drugs. Yeah. And I wouldn't be subject in the beginning because I don't have a drug habit or anything. But starting out, I would have random numbers that I have to call and do UAs. So I had to go in and do UAs up until that was done.
But at no point were you ever told by anyone with the United States government that you could not vote because you were a convicted felon?
No, sir.
Okay. And so after you were relieved from that job, what have you been doing for a living?
I'm an esthetician. I write. While I was in the halfway house, I was working. I was going to school to Ogle, so I went to night school. I worked from 7:30 to 4:30. I made it to school by 5:30 to 10, night school, and I graduated in March 2017 as an esthetician. So I do lashes, I do facials, and I have an event center as well. So I schedule and book parties.
Do you have any children?
I do.
How many children do you have?
I have 3 kids. I take care of my brother's kids too because he was gone. So I have his kids too. So a total of 7.
Okay. So let's draw our attention specifically to what you've been indicted for, all right? That you voted in violation of voting laws, more specifically, Texas laws, that you voted on November 8th of 2016 in the general election, and that you were a convicted felon. Did you, now this is the big topic of everything, right? The state's number 9, this provisional ballot. Do you remember filling out this white part of the provisional ballot?
Yes, I remember everything.
Okay. So let's talk about that day, right? Where were you working? Were you working at that job that you were released from that day?
I was working in Dallas. I worked for Santander at 1601 Elm Street, right where the shooting took place down the street. So that's downtown, where I worked. I got off at work at 4:30. So yes.
Okay. Wait a minute. So you got off at 4:30.
Yes. I got off at 4:30 in Dallas. Yes.
Okay. Let's just stop for a moment. I need you to take a break.
Okay.
You have to wait for your lawyer to finish his question before you speak.
Yes, sir.
Okay? It's not a race. I am listening to everything you have to say. Nobody's going to cut you off.
Okay.
Now, if the prosecution stands up and objects, pause, and then let your lawyer speak on your behalf, and we'll move on from there.
Okay.
Okay. Ask your question again, please.
What time did you leave work, in Dallas that day?
I got off work at 4:30.
And that was on November the 8th of 16.
Correct.
And from there, where did you go?
I went home first because my mama kept calling saying, Crystal, you got to vote. You got to vote. I was like, Mom, I'm going to do it.
And how long did it take you to get home that day?
It takes me about an hour.
And was it raining?
It was.
That day?
Yes, sir. It was raining.
So you went to vote, okay? Where did you go vote?
I went home first to pick up my niece because she hadn't voted. So she's 18. So I picked up my niece, Joanna Jones, and we went up there together to the church right down the street, probably like 4 minutes down the road.
And when you went to vote, did you have your driver's license with you?
I did.
And was it the correct information on your driver's license?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you now States 9 that's in evidence. And is this your handwriting on this white portion of States 9?
Yes.
Okay. And is this your correct address?
Yes.
And is this your correct date of birth?
Correct.
And are those the last four numbers of your social security number?
Yes, sir.
And are you a U.S. citizen?
I am.
Your gender is female.
Correct.
So everything on this portion of this document is truthful, true, and correct. This white part, correct?
Huh?
You have to speak loud.
Yes.
Now the question is this.
Excuse me. Excuse me. May I see the?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I apologize, Judge. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
You may proceed. You may proceed if you don't mind if I read this.
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah.
No, sir. Of course.
All right.
Okay, now this case is really it's not that complicated. The whole issue of this case revolves around the left portion of States 9 on, I guess you could use the word admonishments. All right. Now let me ask you. All right. You've heard testimony from different folks about who's doing what. Did a woman who worked in the polling place help you do anything?
Yes.
Do you know her name?
I don't know her name, but I do know. I want to tell you from step by step.
And we're going to do that. All right. So you go into the polling place. What transpires specifically?
Okay. When I walked in, we looked up my niece's name first for her to vote, and then we realized that she wasn't in the right location. So she automatically went to the car. A guy helped me, and when he looked me up,
Wait, but who helped you?
a gentleman, a man,
Okay.
he helped me out, and I remember him looking me up. We looked by both names and everything, so we couldn't find me. And so then he said, okay, well, what we can do is you can do a provisional form. And he said, so if you at the right location, I said, well, I've been living here. This is my address. I pay taxes to Mansfield. This is my home. I've been here since 08. So he said at this time, he said, well, you could do a provisional form. And I said to him that
Okay. Just talk. I'll just talk a little bit slower, okay? We're not in a hurry.
Okay. He said, you can do a provisional form. And I was like, okay. And he said, that's if you're at the right location, your vote will count. If you're not, it won't.
Okay.
I said, okay, because I know this is where I stay.
Now let's stop for a second. Was the man who testified earlier as the election judge, was that the person you talked to initially?
No, that's my neighbor.
Okay. So you know your neighbor.
No, my neighbor.
And that's not who you talked to.
Of course not.
And he knows you.
He's my neighbor.
Correct. So the man that was talking to you about this was not the man that just testified.
No.
So let's go. Now, let's slow it down a little bit. All right. You're talking too fast for the court reporter. Just slow it down. All right. So once this man gives you the provisional ballot, what happened? What did you do then physically?
No. I gave my license.
Okay.
When I gave my license, when I gave my license and everything, they did whatever they did. When they brought me back the paperwork with my license, a lady instructed me. We sat on the table. This is the first row when you walk in. We sat on the table behind. I never sat on the table on the side. I didn't see anything on the side. I sat on the table behind. The lady sat there and she was
I'm going to object as to hearsay at this point as to what the lady said.
All right, just a moment. Just a moment. No, just a moment. I got to rule on the objection. I'm going to sustain the objection. Rephrase your question.
And you don't say what she said, okay?
Okay.
The question is, did a woman help you with the provisional ballot?
Yes.
And specifically, now there's a portion in States 9 that has, let me approach. May I approach?
You may. And Mr. St. John, you don't have to ask for permission anymore, thank you.
I'm just trying to be polite, Your Honor.
I understand. I understand.
Okay. Now, we do know that the gentleman testified earlier that the election administrator, the election judge, did write his name on the back of this. Now, is he the one who helped you fill this portion out?
No.
Different person.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this, okay? This is the crux of the whole case. There's an admonishment on this left-hand side it's covered by a sticker, right? You know what? I'm going to get one that we can actually see, all right? I'm now showing you States 8. There's a portion that says, to be completed by voter. And then there's this Spanish for it. Did you read this writing, this warning, this admonishment about if you're a convicted felon, you can't vote?
I didn't, sir.
Okay. Now, when you had this document, you filled this out, right? Was this little sticker here? Or do you recall?
I don't recall.
May I have the documents?
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. Yes. Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
So once the provisional ballot is filled out, tell the judge what step you took to actually cast your vote.
Okay. The lady explained to me, make sure everything was...
Your Honor, I object as to hearsay again.
Sustained.
Were you given instructions to make sure that you filled out everything correctly?
Yes, that's what we were doing on this right side. Everything matched my driver's license, and that's what it needed to do. And then I...
Go ahead.
I got the paperwork, and when I went through the paperwork, she walked me to this I sat down in the chair, and it's a little screen. So I walked there and I looked and I was like, what do I do? And she...
Well, don't, okay. So here's the question. Did you want to vote a straight ticket, or did you want to vote individually?
I voted a straight ticket.
But she showed you how, not how to do it, but the method, the mechanism to do that.
Yes.
Right, because I mean, your vote is secret. Nobody's business what your vote is. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, so once you cast your ballot, your vote, what happened then?
I took what I had in my hand and I had to put it somewhere. I remember that. And that was it. I walked out.
Mm-hmm. So here are my questions. All right. You were on supervised release by a United States district judge who is no nonsense. All right. Would you have jeopardized your freedom to vote in something that means nothing, to not be with your family, to not take care of your family, to not support your family, to not be with your children? Would you have jeopardized that freedom if you knew you couldn't vote because you were a convicted felon?
No.
Now, if the voting judge, who apparently knows you, had told you, hey, Miss Mason, I remember you went to jail at some point. Are you a convicted felon? Did he ever ask you that?
No.
Now, the question I would suggest that the judge might have is this. There's some testimony that you glanced at the left-hand side of States 9. Did you? Did you look at the entire document, or was this place crowded?
It wasn't crowded at all, sir.
Did you feel rushed in what you were doing?
I didn't feel rushed at all. I had the lady that was just telling me this part. I didn't even look over there. I didn't pay attention. All I know was a provisional form, you know. I didn't pay attention to read anything because she directed me to one area just to make sure it was correct for my driver's license, and that was it.
If knowing that Judge Mcbride would come down with the wrath of himself, knowing that, would you have jeopardized your freedom just to vote in something that matters not in terms of something that is changing your life?
All the motions I wrote to get out of there when I was in there, why would I dare? All the letters I wrote to the probation officer, Carol Foreman, why would I dare jeopardize losing a good job, saving my house, and leaving my kids again, and missing my son from graduating from high school this year, as well as going to college on a football scholarship? I wouldn't dare do that, not to vote.
I'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination. Well, gentlemen, this is a good spot to take a break because I have that meeting that I have to. I have to host. So we will resume at 1:30. We will be in recess until that time.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mason, I just have a couple of questions for you. And if I phrase a question in a way that you don't understand, just let me know and I'll rephrase, okay?
Okay.
But it's safe to say that you can definitely read and write. Is that?
Yes, sir.
And you are an intelligent person.
Yes, sir.
And whenever you were going through your federal conviction, your sentencing supervision paperwork, you would have had to read a lot of documents for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, see, that's documentation. Now, you wanted to be sure that you could read and you understood that language, correct?
Yes.
Now, in 2004, you've heard some previous testimony, specifically states Exhibit number 5, when you originally registered to vote in Tarrant County. It was in 2004, correct?
Yes, I believe. Yes.
That was a presidential election. Do you recall when you first voted in Tarrant County?
Yes. I don't really recall.
And when you showed up to the poll, you were not on the list. You had to do a provisional ballot back then. Do you recall?
I could have. Yes, I remember filling out paperwork. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit number 5. So this is the affidavit of provisional voting from 2004. Does that look familiar?
It's my writing. It's my information.
Yes, ma'am. And you heard the previous testimony that the court says that submitting a provisional affidavit, that there would be this additional language in State's Exhibit number 8, which you've already seen. We've already been over in great detail, correct?
Yes, I have. Yes, sir.
So you heard the testimony that you would have had these admonishments or this affidavit back in 2004, correct?
I would assume so. Yes.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. And you understand the importance of these admonishments. This essentially lays out the requirements for eligibility to vote in an election here in the state of Texas. Do you understand?
I understand it now. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And then 2008, when you showed up to the poll to vote, and that was a presidential election, correct?
Yes.
November of 2008?
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
And when you voted in that election, you were actually on the list.
Correct.
So you voted in the presidential election of 2004, you voted in the presidential election of 2008, and then the presidential election of 2012 comes along and you were in the federal penitentiary, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Now, when the election day came in 2012 and you're confined in the penitentiary, were you able to vote?
No, I was in prison.
Were there voting polls open at the federal penitentiary?
No, sir.
Why not?
I was in prison.
Right.
Correct.
Why do you think there are not voting stations in the penitentiary?
Explain yourself.
Well, it's safe to say that it's obvious that you're not eligible to vote when you're in the penitentiary.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, I would assume so.
All right. So it was clear to you at that time when you were confined that you could not vote.
No, it wasn't.
Well, could you vote?
I was in prison. I wasn't thinking about voting, sir.
Did you know the presidential election came up?
Yes, sir, I did, but I was in prison. I'm not at my home address. So with me not being at my home address, I can't go vote. I'm not at my home address. I'm in prison.
Mm-hmm. It's safe to say that in Tarrant County, there are hundreds of polling stations. There's an opportunity to send in a mail ballot. There are early voting stations. It's safe to say that the county goes out of its way to make sure that everyone who's eligible can vote. Correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. But there was no mechanism to vote from the federal penitentiary, correct?
No, sir, it wasn't.
Right. So it is obvious at that time that you were not allowed to vote.
I was incarcerated, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Now, upon your release, now in 2016, when you show up to the poll, you are not on the list. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
All right. So what is going through your mind as far as why you are not on the list? And do you think that, because I know that you must have had some thought in some way, why am I not on the list? What was going through your mind?
Well, actually, I had a voter's registration card too. I didn't bring it with me, but I was thinking like I've been here since '08, and I'm not understanding why you would tell me that I might not be here to actually vote. I couldn't vote at this location, and then I show my ID and everything saying this is where I live. I've been living here, at that time 8 years, so I wouldn't assume I couldn't vote.
What between 2008 when you were on the list and 2016 when you're not on the list, what critical event in your life has taken place?
Okay, I went to prison.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
It's.
Now, hang on. You went to prison.
Yes, sir.
That's something that happened. It did not even cross your mind a little bit that is the reason why that you are not on the list?
Not at all. I wouldn't have voted. I wouldn't have voted, sir. Not at all.
All right. Now, you received these admonishments back in 2004, and your testimony today in regard to State's Exhibit number 8, and specifically State's Exhibit number 9, the exact affidavit, it's your testimony that you simply did not read this?
Not at all. I had someone helping me. I had a woman that was helping me, and all she explained to me was, I'm doing it. Well, the gentleman told me that you can do a provisional form. And on that provisional form, if you're at the right location or if you're in the right area, then it's going to count. If not, it won't. So that's all I understood the form to be, was if I'm here and where I'm supposed to vote, it's supposed to count. That's it.
Do you recall Carl Dietrich? He testified. You were in here for his testimony, were you not?
I was.
And he said that he told, well, please read this.
Carl?
You heard that?
Yes, I did, sir. Carl?
Did he tell you that?
He didn't tell me that. I didn't see him. Carl is my neighbor.
You're saying you never even saw him?
Carl is my neighbor. Carl stays right across the street from me. So that means I know who my neighbor is. So that means I would have had a conversation with my neighbor if I seen my neighbor. When I see my attorney, I wrote on a piece of paper. I said, that's my neighbor. What's he doing here? I had no.
So it's and let me ask you a question. Is your testimony today that you did not even see him?
I did not see my neighbor. I would have. All I know is she took my ID and they filled out whatever they needed. She went back with me. We sat on the back table. When we sat on the back table, only thing I did, she said, make sure everything is, a man didn't help me. A young guy helped me. And when a young guy helped me at the front. When he looked me up, that's who helped me at the front. When I got to the back, I sat behind the first table and she was talking to me. She was stating she just bought a lot of land and they were moving. And
Your Honor, I object as to non-responsiveness at this point.
Just a moment. Let me rule. Sustained. Ask your next question.
Are you saying that Carl Dietrich, are you inferring that he was not truthful in his testimony, yes or no?
was not truthful at all.
Okay. And you heard from Jared. Jared said that he saw you go line by line with your finger. Now, let me ask. Jared saw you go line by line with your finger on the affidavit language. Are you saying that he's being untruthful as well?
Was not truthful at all.
Okay, so you're saying that both of these men have just made this up.
What I'm saying is
that a yes or no?
It's not true at all, sir. It's not true at all.
Now, do you recall talking to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram?
I did.
In March of 2017?
I do.
And do you recall giving a phone interview?
I didn't give a phone interview. She told me she was going to put everything in, but I did let her know that.
Now, hang on. Let me ask a question. Do you recall telling the reporter, I believe it was Anna Tinsley and Deanna Boyd, you told them that you did, in fact, skim the affidavit. You, quote, skimmed it.
That's not true.
Okay, so they're lying too.
And I didn't talk to a Tinsley. I talked to Deanna Boyd.
Deanna Boyd.
Correct.
And Deanna, you told Deanna Boyd that you did, in fact, skim this affidavit.
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. Well, have you had a chance to look at the article?
No, I haven't.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
All right. Ms. Hobbs, I'm showing you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 11, and to be fair to you, I'll let you look at this, and you let me know when you've had enough time to look at it and understand what it is.
Okay, I'm scanning through it. What is it that I...
Yes, ma'am, and you understand State's Exhibit 11, this appears to be the Star-Telegram article?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, it says, she acknowledges she only skimmed the affidavit.
Him reading to something into the record. I've not even seen this exhibit.
That's fine.
So I don't even know what he's talking about.
I have sustained the objection. Don't read it into the record. Just refresh the witness' memory.
If you could read this paragraph right here. Have you had enough time to read it?
I did.
And so you told Deanna Boyd that you, and again, this is a yes or no, that you had skimmed through the form, correct?
I don't recall saying that, but I'm sure I did. I had to scan through it, sir. I put my information on it, so we would say yes.
No. Skim through the affidavit language.
I didn't know.
Yes or no?
No, I didn't. Not at all.
So Deanna Boyd's lying.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Didn't.
Just a moment. Just a moment.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just trying to control the courtroom. Please don't say anything else. Okay? And do you have a legal objection, counsel?
Well, it's leading, and second, it's improper impeachment. I mean, if Deanna Boyd is outside to testify, sure, we'll cross-examine her. But we have a little issue of confrontation going on right here.
Right. let me visit with the lawyers on the side just real briefly. Thank you. Do you have a response to his objection, or what are you trying to do?
In regard to leading, it's cross.
Well, I know that. I think you're good on that point. However,
Now, the rest of the objection is confrontation clause.
Well, it's improper impeachment unless you have Deanna Boyd outside for me to cross-examine. So
I was simply asking a simple question.
Wait. Let me finish. Okay. So, do you have a legal response as opposed to an argument?
Legal response in regard to the Crawford or the confrontation clause objection?
The confrontation. This is impeachment. You can ask, do you know? Are you aware? That issue I'm not concerned about. But in terms of you asking her about how to refresh your memory and things of that nature, what are you trying to do?
You know, I'm going to move on. I've made my point, really. I just wanted, did she say that or not? Because it appears she did.
Okay. I'm trying to understand myself, and I'm going to ask for a clarification.
Sure.
However, under 613, you can ask whether a person made a statement, and you can follow that rule.
Sure.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Anything else?
No.
No. Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. Now, just to summarize, Ms. Hobbs, your testimony is that you did not read this whatsoever.
I didn't, sir.
That is your testimony. Even though, and you are saying that Carl Dietrich and Jared, their testimony is untruthful?
that's repetitious, Judge. Come on, Judge.
Yeah, I can discern that. But I'm going to overrule your objection. Just limit it to factual questions, please. No argument.
Yes. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. I know my neighbor.
Right. Now, also in regard to State's Exhibit number 11, did you tell, or do you recall telling Deanna Boyd that you were being targeted for prosecution?
No.
Would you like a chance again to review the document?
I seen that, sir. I seen it.
You saw it was in there, correct?
Was in there, yes.
And you did not tell her that?
I was targeted?
Look, this is legally, Judge. She has answered the question. All right, that's her answer. It's argumentative. I object.
Sustained. Rephrase your question.
All right, and the question is, you've had a chance to read State's Exhibit number 11.
I did.
And within there, that's made reference of your quote that you have been targeted for prosecution, correct?
The microphone on.
I seen it in there, and no, I didn't tell her I was being targeted for prosecution. No, sir.
And so at this point, and we've already been over this, that Carl Dietrich and Jared, but you're also asserting that Deanna Boyd is untruthful too, yes or no?
What I'm saying is she writes the paper, you know. I'm saying I know what I've said and what I told her, and I was also communicating with her through my Facebook too. So yeah, I do remember the things I told her, and I told her that I wouldn't have dared. If I would have seen that, if I would have got up and walked away, I didn't want to go vote. I didn't even want to go vote. My mom made me vote.
Now, you also heard from Carl Dietrich that he said not only did he instruct you to read the affidavit, but he also had you affirm to what's in there.
I heard that, sir, and that's incorrect. I didn't even deal with him. If he feel, I remember I gave him my ID. And like I said, I gave him my ID. If he filled out what he filled out, he wasn't the one that was with me. I went and sat at the table with a lady. She helped me out. From there, walked me over to the booth. From there, when I walked over from the booth, that was it. If I would have seen my neighbor, I would have spoke to my neighbor. My neighbor know I went to prison. My neighbor know when I came home. My neighbor know when I was fixing up my house. He's my neighbor. We share the same street. I mean, we're not around the corner from each other. They're my neighbors too, over there. But they son, I don't know. My kids knew, we've been there for 9 years.
So it's your testimony that he's being untruthful in that regard too?
I'm
No, that's fine. Hey, let me finish. In regard to you affirming to the language in this affidavit.
Very untruthful.
Now, Crystal, you would admit the language within States Exhibit 8 and States Exhibit number 9 in the regard to the green portion, that first paragraph, it's clear.
Yes, sir, it is. It is.
Okay, so it's safe to say that anyone reading this language would know that if I'm a felon, or if I'm a felon who has not concluded my sentence being an unsupervised release, that it is clear I'm not eligible to vote. That's clear.
Correct.
Correct. You would admit that.
You're absolutely correct.
You had made reference to, and I believe the last word you said on direct was, why would I put myself in jeopardy? Why would I have put my freedom in jeopardy? I have children. And did you have these same children in 2011 when you committed this crime of conspiracy to defraud the United States? Yes or no, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't think about them at that time, did you?
I did think about them. The whole time I was gone for 2.5 years, I thought about them. So why would I leave them again? Why would a mother do that to her children again?
Were you thinking about them when you committed the crime?
On the tax office, sir. The tax office.
That is
I'm
not
okay with it.
Just a moment.
I'm okay with it. I own the tax office. I was inflating and deflating returns. I'm okay with that. Okay? What I did was how I helped people get more money back. I ain't scared to say that's what I did, so I'm okay with it. I did that. I admit that. It's wrong. But what I am saying is I would never do it again. I would never do anything else to jeopardize, to lose my kids again. I was happy enough to come home and see my baby graduate, my daughter. Now my son's graduating again. I wouldn't have dared went to the poll to vote. I haven't caught any new offense. I came back here, rehabilitated myself. I went to school for over 11 months and graduated from over in an esthetician right now. From there, the whole time I was working, going to school, I have my own business now. Why would I do something that say, hey, y'all, my house was in foreclosure. Guess what? I saved the house. Now everything is on track again. I'm paying what I can to pay on my restitution because I owe restitution. You're absolutely right. So why would I turn around and say, hey, I'd like to go back to jail and leave y'all again?
Just a moment, Ms. Mason. The court reporter has raised her hand and she cannot keep up as fast as you're talking. Okay, so you can you can state what you were going to state just a moment ago. Just slow down, please. All right.
Crystal, you were not thinking about them when you defrauded the United States government of $4.2 million, were you?
That's not relevant. That's not relevant, Judge. It's not relevant. That has nothing to do with this case at all.
All right. All right. Objection is overruled. Cross-examination.
You weren't, were you?
You don't even know the story of that, okay? The reason why they took the money amount the way that it is because what they did was they took every return and they added it up together. And that's the reason why it's that amount. It wasn't that amount at all. But they hit us with the numbers, sir, and that's what it is. If I had 4.2 million, But again, that was the returns that went through the returns that didn't go through. And then you go all the way back from years that they couldn't even still charge me for it. I didn't take anybody money. I didn't run away with nobody's information. All I did was help people get more money back. I got more money. It was still wrong. And I did my time for it, sir.
Ms. Hobbs, was this a jury trial?
Oh, it was a trial of Mr. Judge Mcbride.
I'm sorry. Restate.
I'm sorry.
Well, restate your last response that you gave.
This was by Mr. Mcbride, where he asked me, you're asking me about the other conviction, right? You said.
Just restate your question.
Okay, yes, sir.
Just restate your question.
I will, yes, sir. Now, this was a jury trial.
What a jury trial.
Did you go, as you did today, did you go in front of the Honorable Judge Mcbride and did you say, Your Honor, I am not guilty?
No, I made a plea. I knew I was guilty. I made a plea. I stood up. I got my punishment. I accepted responsibility. I stood up and I apologized for my action, not only to the.
But today you are saying you didn't defraud the United States government out of $4.2 million.
I'm saying it. The money amount it wasn't accurate, and it's been going up the whole time I've been in there too, so that it didn't start out at that amount.
Okay, so the federal government got it wrong?
Judge, legally, this is not relevant to illegal voting. This has nothing to do with any issue on voting, Judge.
Okay, what is your specific legal objection?
It's not relevant.
All right. Overruled.
So the United States government got that wrong, correct? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is the money amount changed.
She's answered your question, counsel. Just move on.
Yes, sir. And who changed that money amount?
I have no idea. Just like it changed when I got out, it was a different amount.
Now, ma'am, you understand that the judgment made at the time of your sentencing, it says $4.2 million, correct?
Yeah, it does.
So it was set in stone at that time at the sentencing in 2012, so it did not change.
It gained interest the whole time I was in jail, so it did change.
Finally, you've now had a chance to read the affidavit language, correct?
I have, yes, sir, I have.
And you see that in there it says, I understand that this is a felony of the second degree to vote in an election, which I know I'm not eligible. You did see it, says it on the affidavit.
Yes, I see it. I seen it.
To anyone who would have read it, it would have been clear that this is a felony, correct?
Yes. If it was read, yes, it would have been very clear.
I'll pass the witness.
Redirect.
Just a few follow-up questions, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
One question I did not ask you earlier is there was some testimony that a letter was sent to you previously about your ineligibility to vote, sent to your home address. And I asked the question of the witness, how do you know that she received it? And they said they have no idea whether she received it or didn't. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Well, did you receive a letter from Tarrant County stating that you could not vote?
No, sir, I didn't. And plus, at that time, I was incarcerated.
Of course. Now, I'm going to ask you this question one more time. I think the judge doesn't need to keep hearing the same issue. So you are a convicted felon. All right. If you would have received this document, if you would have read this document, would you have done it? Yes or no?
course not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any further questions, State?
Very brief, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Now, that day, 2016, did you vote electronically or with a written ballot?
In 2016,
Yes, ma'am. The election.
I went to the station. So when I went there, the lady I told her I wanted a straight ticket. So she told me, okay, yeah. So no, I went to this little thing, and then I put some numbers in. I remember that. And I put the paper up. I held the paper when I got through. I filled everything out and made sure it matches my ID. And then she walked over to me there where I needed to go.
Okay. And in regard to State's Exhibit number 9, and this is the last question. You saw the back. You saw Carl Dietrich's signature on the back.
I did see that, yes.
That's his signature.
I seen all that. It was filled out when she brought it to me.
No further question.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Well, may I have, does anybody have any objection if I ask some questions?
No, sir. Of course not. Of course not.
No, sir.
No, I was gonna bring you this. It's
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. And no, the other one too.
Oh, sorry. Of course.
Thanks. Now, Miss Mason, all right, just give me a moment, Miss Mason. Miss Mason, I understand you're in front of Judge Mcbride, and being in federal court is obviously a little bit it leaves an impression on you, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Now, one of the things is that there are a number of admonishments that are given to you at the time that you decide to plead guilty, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. You need to talk loud enough so everybody can.
Yes, sir.
So everybody can hear you. Your lawyer can hear you. The prosecutor can hear you. And then it's clear for the record. When you go and decide to plead guilty, there is a plea bargain agreement that outlines all these different things that you're waiving, correct? In addition to a factual resume, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then some months later, after a pre-sentence hearing report is prepared, you go through a sentencing.
Yes.
And at the time of the sentencing, Judge Mcbride also reviews additional admonishments that affects you for years after that. It even talks about how you'll be placed on community service. You know, when you're put, not pretrial release, but your community service release, right?
Yes.
And how long on probation were you on after that? After you were released?
Okay, I was at the halfway house for 9 months, and then from there, August 16th. Okay, and then that's when. So I was on probation since August 16th.
Okay. So as you're going through the probation community service during the community service program through the district court clerk, you're going back to district court even after you're released, correct?
Yes.
How often did you go see Judge Mcbride after you were released?
Never.
Never. Okay. Well, some people do report, but you're still reporting to the probation department, though.
Yes.
Huh? Correct? Okay. When you were released, you had to go see him one time before you were placed back on probation?
No.
Okay. All right. So, but you did meet with the probation department.
Yes.
Okay. And they are having you sign all sorts of paperwork.
Yes.
And they're telling you how you're going to have to report. Nobody mentioned to you, nobody mentioned to you that you had a legal duty not to vote?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. All right. Now, you understand that you did sacrifice a number of rights when you were convicted of a felony, though, correct?
Yes, I knew from my supervisor release, I know everything that's on there, you know, what I'm supposed to follow. And I do remember with Carol Foreman, everything that I filled out and, you know, like not being with felons, no guns, like not being around guns and not being around felons and no drugs. So that they could search my house at any time and all that. So, yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. But the officer didn't review every detail of what was in the written documents, did they, or did they not?
No, they didn't.
Okay. So clearly, you had other obligations that were contained in the paperwork related to your probation, related to the conviction that you had to follow. Correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I am looking at here what has been handed to me in State's Exhibit 9 and I'm sorry, number number 9 and number 8, and I can't help but notice that even when you're filling out the white portion of the affidavit, and you understand the significance of the word affidavit because you had a factual resume or affidavit that was filled out in federal court.
Yes.
Correct? And there's some legal significance to this. Correct?
Yes.
And to the left, I noticed that there are a bunch of arrows that are pointed to the spots that you're filling in with a bunch of information. And it further says, to be completed by the voter in the box.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So I just want to make sure you're explaining to me, despite all the documents and all the things that you've done in federal court, and knowing that this is a legal document, you wouldn't read that.
I didn't really know it was a legal document. All I know it was a provisional form. We didn't go into anything like that.
Well, I understand that. But my question, though, is that it says the word affidavit. That has a legal connotation to it.
Yeah, it did.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then, voting, excuse me, is a right, not a privilege. Well, it could be considered a privilege as well, but voting is that you can lose that right.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, but you're telling me you didn't read this, and because you didn't read it, you didn't realize that you no longer had the right to vote.
I had no idea. I got off work at 4:30, flew from going home, stopped by. It was raining. I had to pick up my niece. We went up there and I just listened to exactly what they were telling me. And I just did it. I can't even tell you if it was open, why. I don't know if it was just the white part, where I voted. I have no idea. All I did was make sure that, can I see that real quick?
Yeah, sure. This is the one that was actually filled out.
Yeah, I could have did it just like this and just filled it in. I don't know. I can't really, I didn't pay attention to any of this. Only thing I know is I wanted to make sure, like she said, everything matched my ID. So that was it. I didn't think that me voting that I would be jeopardizing my freedom. I wouldn't have did it. And if I would have, If I would have dared, looked over and even read it, I would have got up and walked away. It was not worth it. I know who my judge is. I was the one writing letters he sent back to me to make me do it into a motion. I was the one that was writing the court and writing my judge. I mean, not writing my probation officer trying to get out early, and it didn't happen. So I wouldn't have, if I would have read that, I would have left that paper and went away real quick. I did not read that. I did not see that. I had no, when the lady arrested me there, she said, you have a warrant out for your arrest for illegal voting. I said, no, ma'am, I didn't illegal vote. I used my ID, and because I didn't comprehend that I wasn't supposed to vote. So as soon as I got out, I asked my probation officer, like, what happened? And she was like, well, she's going to find out what's going on, but no, I would not have voted. It wasn't that serious. I would not have did that.
All right, State, do you have any additional questions?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Mason, you may step down. Thank you very much. Call your next witness.
Judge, at this time, rest.
Rest and close.
Close.
All right, gentlemen. Argument. State, you may proceed.
We waive open close and reserve the right to close.
Thank you.
May I borrow that again real quick, Judge?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I'll come and get it. Okay. I'm going to be brief because I would suggest that you are in a unique position to actually evaluate the consequences that she could suffer by committing a felony. You're more uniquely qualified than any other judge in this courthouse because of what you did in the past in terms of practicing before the court and in front of this very judge. She is not a lawyer. And I notice also that this document clearly has been folded. Now, I didn't fold it. I don't know if Mr. Smith folded, but someone has folded this document before. Now, why is Crystal Mason? Now, this is very important, Your Honor. Think about the reasoning part. Why she didn't tell the truth? Every single place she fills out her date of birth, her driver's license, she signs it. Why she didn't tell the truth if she's trying to get away with sneaky phony? She's not going to do that because she's trying to get away with committing a felony. Why is she going to jeopardize being incarcerated again in federal prison just to vote on something that really doesn't change her life? Her vote was not going to change her life, right? It's not going to change anything she did in her life. But what would change her life would be voting illegally and knowingly doing that. Look, I've known this court for a long time. And I know the court is very articulate and thoughtful in its process. This is the issue, Your Honor. It's so simple. In the indictment, the state did not prove she intended to vote fraudulently. More specifically, Crystal Mason did not vote in an election when she knew she's not eligible. She voted because she believed, she had a good faith belief, an honest belief that she could vote. Kenneth Mays testified U.S. probation never admonished her she couldn't vote. Right? There's nothing when you plead guilty in federal court, nothing that says you can't vote. There's nothing from any federal judge that says you can't vote. I know John Mcbride's policy. He doesn't meet with anybody released on supervised release, unlike Judge Means and O'Connor. She had no knowledge that she couldn't vote. She was never told in the federal prison she couldn't vote. She's never told in the halfway house she couldn't vote. When she had orientation with the U.S. probation officer on the 4th floor, she was never told she couldn't vote. She's not a lawyer. No. So she goes to vote in good faith on general election day, leaves Dallas County at 4:30, right? 4:30. Now comes there in the pouring rainstorm. Now, if you can remember that day, it was pouring rain during the general election. The young man who was a marksman with his watch says she comes in at 4:15. Now, I wonder if he checked 400 or 500 people that day to see what time they came in. He's going to be a good young Air Force cadet. He's a good kid. But he's wrong about that. And why this election judge is so obsessed with getting Crystal Mason bad information? She knows that man. She could have talked to her neighbor, and he signs it, right? But I suggest he did on the February before. He didn't do it in her presence. She talked to an election official woman that helped her with this. The police report it's in the police report that she talked to a woman, right? So how's she making this up, Your Honor? I find that amazing that she's making this up today. Now I'm going to sit down now because I know that this court will make the correct decision based on the law and the evidence. The government did not prove she voted illegally. She did not know she could not vote. That's the clear issue. Yes, she's a convicted felon. We don't contest that. But she was never told that she couldn't vote. And she voted in good faith.
Counsel.
Thank you. Please, the court, Mr. St. John. Your Honor, as Mr. St. John stated, there is only one element at issue here, as the court well knows. Did she know that she was not eligible to vote when she went there? Now, going back to 2004, this wasn't the only time she voted provisionally. This wasn't the first time that she had to fill out this affidavit. As the court pointed out, obviously a legal document, a document with legal ramifications, and she was put on notice at that time what the qualifications are to register to vote. 2008, she votes. She's on the list. In 2012, she's not able to vote. There's no polls in TDC. It's clear at that point that there is an issue and you are not eligible. She's released in 2016. She shows up. She's not on the list. You're on the list in 2008. You're not on the list in 2016. So what critical event has happened? To assert that you have no clue that this was an issue, it's unbelievable. With all that aside, everything I've said, it's compelling evidence. But with all that aside, the system has safeguards in place, Your Honor. There was a stop sign put right in front of her face. By her own admission, the language is clear. The document was intact. Carl Dietrich took the stand. He's got no motivation to lie here, and he's obviously got a very good memory about the whole ordeal, and it's his practice. He says, please read this. Read this. It's important. It's important to him. He further testified that had she just taken it and filled it out, that would have been an issue with him because it's important to him. This is an important process. And he would have said, no, please, you need to read this. And that's why he makes her affirm to it, just to be double sure that she understands the severity of it. Also, young Jared, he recalls Miss Mason going line by line, looking at him, putting her finger on the language. Jared has no motivation to lie here. Miss Mason, last word she had on her initial direct examination, what she left the court was, why would I do this? There is no reason to do this. Why would I put my jeopardy at risk? But at that point, she opened the door to what happened back in 2011. Why put yourself at risk back then? That argument doesn't hold water with her because she obviously has put herself in jeopardy before in a big big way. Also, in regard to that conviction, of course, we had to prove it for jurisdictional purposes, but as the court well knows, under Texas Rules of Evidence 609, that conviction is also relevant for impeachment purposes to go towards the witness's truthfulness or untruthfulness. What it comes down to is, are you going to believe Miss Mason, or are you going to believe Carl Dietrich and Jared? It's one of the two that has happened. And that conviction has to go towards her credibility under the rules of evidence. But in the end, Your Honor, we assert to the court that this is clear, and we respectfully request that you find her guilty of illegal voting. Thank you for your time.
Counsel, I have a question for you. Can you give me an objective fact that you're relying on that indicates that she had knowledge that's been produced during the trial?
Yes, sir.
Not by inference.
Okay.
I'm talking about direct evidence.
I would say that the direct evidence is, Your Honor, what Jared saw her with her finger on the language, or
Pardon me. Look, this is argument on him, but that is clearly not his testimony, Judge, and the court can recall that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, counsel.
yes, sir.
You may continue.
Jared's testimony that she had her finger going through the language. Also, Carl Dietrich's testimony going towards the fact that he told her to read it. Crystal Mason affirming to the language. Do you affirm that everything in this affidavit is true specifically for that day in regard to that affidavit, Your Honor?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to take it under advisement, render my decision shortly. Thank you. We'll be in recess. Miss Mason, will you please stand? All right. Based upon your plea of not guilty and after hearing the evidence and testimony, the court does find you guilty of the offense of illegal voting. Both sides ready to proceed on to punishment?
The state's ready.
Yes, Judge.
All right, thank you very much. Please be seated. State, you may proceed.